Welcome to TM Radio Broadcasting. My name is Frank Allen. We are live from Boston, Massachusetts. Today's date is Friday, May 3rd, 2024. If you'd like to listen in, dial +1 518 801 1318. When we are live, you can listen here. When we are off the air, you can listen on this line to past episodes 24 hours a day. If you have a question for myself or my guest, dial +1 617 987 8603. Tonight, we have the great pleasure of welcoming Andy Williams, Jr., candidate for President of the United States. Go ahead, Andy.
Hey, Frank. Man, glad to be here. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This will be a first for me. I have never had a presidential candidate as a guest. I do have some questions for you. You are new to our listening audience and myself. Can you tell us about yourself and why you have chosen to run for the most powerful political position in the world today? Go ahead, Andy.
Well, my name is Andy Hope Williams Jr. To the latter question, I was born for this. And I can't say it no better way other than saying when I look at what's going on in America, there's somebody that needs to step up with common sense solutions and let the people know about the power that we have. And out of the last 50 years, just from what I've seen, the closest to being a solution oriented candidate in my book is Jimmy Carter. He was a true statesman. He cared about what was right, not what's popular. And from that time moving forward, it seems like there's just been a division between the people, the politics, the policies, so many promises that people are saying they can do if they get elected. And both major political parties have held the House, and none of the promises that people make on their campaign trail has been fulfilled. And the reason why, it's not part of the job description. That's why. And so for my study, from the time being 2 years old on up to now, just what I was created for, what I've been through the journey of my mother and father separating when I was two. My stepmother is German. I like to call people by the nationality, whether you're Swedish, Irish, German, Dutch, Portuguese. We would label her as white or Caucasian. I try to stay away from the crayon colors because we're not in the Crayola. We're not from the land of Crayola. And I think it brings a sense of dignity, a unity, and curiosity when we discuss our nationality or where we declare we're from, as opposed to saying white or black. My stepmother, her name is Bridget. Her and my father separated when I was 12. I got involved in the street gangs, because I no longer had a two-parent household. And my mother, I prefer to call her my mother, she was a disciplinarian. She's, like I said, she had a German background. I went to Germany when I was 7, had a two-parent household growing up. I had chores, duties. The light comes on, I have to go in the house. And just so you get a little clarity, I'm 51 years old. A lot of times people think I'm like 30, but I'm 51. And so the way that I was, raised, it was in a structured environment. But as my mother and my father when they separated, I was always curious about the gangs in the community where I lived at from school, because it just looked it cool. It wasn't because like, oh, they're doing this, getting it just looked it cool. And so I got involved in that, which that wound up leading me just down a path of negativity, which I think I was already headed down the path. I just had an accountability there with my stepmom, because my dad had his own construction business. So he was early up, late coming home. I still got grounded when I got in trouble. So pops wasn't like, son, I'm ignoring you. But as a single father with, I had an older brother. My dad could only do so much, with a drive to provide. That's what he was trying to do. I wind up going to jail 1990 for a strong arm robbery. I mean, I snatched somebody's chain off the neck, a girl from school. I did get charged with a different case. The lieutenant of the police department's wife chain got snatched that night from a private school, Rosary, which Andy Williams Jr. never did that. I respected my elders in such a way that I would not have done that. I wound up going to jail, 3 years. Did about 9 months in the county, 4 months in prison. I got out. Childhood home where I paroled to was a drug house. My uncle, cousins lived there. I moved back in, and my buddies, hey, Andy, you get a nice spot. And I got introduced to selling cocaine. And 3 months later, I was back in the county jail. I wind up getting a law library pass and beating that case in the bench trial. Got involved in selling drugs. That's just the truth. That was the economic opportunity for the environment I was in at that time, until the leader of the gang at that time, which was Larry Hoover, came out with a new concept called From Gangster Disciple to Growth and Development. And I bought into that blueprint, and I walked away from the negative lifestyle I had and wind up going to church, got married, 3 daughters. Then the foreclosure, so then I owned a mortgage company, and then the foreclosure crisis hit. I fought with the foreclosures for my own personal foreclosure for 13 years. Self learned about the securitization, mortgage backed securities, pooling services agreement, mortgage servicing fraud, anything that dealt with the foreclosure financial crisis. I became an expert at it. Wind up suing Bank of America, just all of the big banks, the Trust, Bank of New York, Mellon, helped build a couple law firms, wind up getting a bachelor's degree in paralegal studies from Lewis University. But the foreclosure crisis I had at home, the stress was too much, wind up getting a divorce. And then after that, I joined the NAACP during this advocacy work and just got really, really back involved in the community, advocating for change. From there, one of my professors hired me from Lewis University. I went to work at his law firm, and then I met my second wife. One of the things that about me that's unique is the things about my presidential campaign, they're from lived experience, which created me to be expertise in the areas that I advocate for, whether it's the opioid epidemic, my little brother died from an overdose, whether it's mass shooting, there was a mass shooting in Aurora, Illinois, Henry Pratt, 5 people got were deceased and 6 police officers were shot. The shooter was my childhood friend. Now I did the eulogy because I'm a minister, a unique minister because my ministry is in the streets with the people. But I wind up having to do the eulogy when we talk about prisoners' rights, because prisoners do have rights because they're people. I wind up suing the United States in 31 states back in 2021. There's a big thing about police and traffic stops. I was involved in a traffic stop in 2019 that lasted over an hour, and I'm still litigating that right now. I wind up suing the state of Illinois for their unlawful traffic driver's license scheme. Because what I'm really representing is the people have the power, and we need to go back to common law, which was the law of the land, where it required a victim or injury to people or their property. And when something like that happened, it wasn't so much about locking you up and throwing away the key. It was about making the individual whole, restoring what you broke or breached to the individual, the family, or the property. And that's where we need to go as our country moves forward. And I'm not saying there's not an accountability, because when you're a threat to yourself or other people, there has to be accountability, but accountability for you to learn, to grow, to develop. And we could get so much into the history. I also feel like I'm a historian from what I've read, but I also will be very transparent. And everything that I read does not mean it's accurate. So I still could have a biased mindset, but I have to have the buck to stop somewhere. Like Harry Truman says, like at some point, We can't blame Democrats, Republicans, none of that. We got to say the buck stops here, and that's Andy. And you ask, why did I run for this office? I didn't choose to run for this office. This office chose me. Like I said, I was born for this. This is the second time of me running. And in May 3rd, 2019, 10 o'clock, the voice came to me and was like, would you run for president? Would you consider it? And I was like, okay, just as casual as could be. That's what I thought. And I never had a desire to be in politics. And from there, I did. When I look back from that original campaign, which I knew nothing about, did the reading, called the FEC, joined the Libertarian Party, did so much to learn. When the November 2020 election was over, my campaign didn't stop. I kept doing. I kept advocating for people. Wind up having to sue the IRS for the unlawful tax scheme and won. They settled. So it's things that Andy really does have experience with, even though you haven't heard about me. And if you're listening today, you heard about me now. So I think that's about my little background, brother Frank.
Okay, thank you, Andy. That's very interesting, and it's also very good, honest, true. I think you're somebody that would take care of the people, and I'm very proud to see that you are a minister as well. What political
Yeah.
platform are you going to run on?
I am on the platform of the people. There's two people, was one group of people, but from the ministerial platform, it's Second Chronicles 7:14 says, "If my people who are called by my name would turn from their wicked ways." That means the people have the power to make the change. It's nobody else can change for us as people. And then the second is we the people, in order to form a more perfect union. The people created government. Government didn't create the people. So when you say what platform am I going to run on, I'm running on the people's platform. By the people, for the people, because Andy is one of the people. Collectively, we are the people. So somebody needs to represent the people. And I'm a representative of people, whether you come from low class, middle class, extensive class. I made $1 million a year working in my mortgage company. I know about entrepreneurship. I know about being below the poverty level. I know about the mindset having you believe that you're stuck in this level. And I've also known about success. And I've learned to be content in it. And the most thing that I'm sharing, besides the job description, which most people don't recognize, that the Constitution lists the job description for every elected official and the duties and the powers they have, which is truly to serve the people. That's what I'm here to do. Serve the people and empower the people to let them know it's not power to the people, it's the people have the power. And when you're elected, you're here to serve the people, not the other way around. And that's where I feel like being 51, as I like to say, we're the Joshua generation. We're going to get this thing in order once and for all. We're going to set the record straight and we're going to go back to a common law, back to do unto others as you would have others do unto you, back to being accountable when you do something wrong and not plead immunity or hide behind your job or your title or your office. And that doesn't matter. And I mean that whether you're corporation, elected official, or in the ministry. You can't hide behind your job. And if you're just one of the neighbors, everybody has to have an accountability so we are able to deter. And I'm not saying deterrent because I punish you super hard. I'm saying if you don't show a level of accountability, you see the fruit of it right now when there's a lack of accountability. I mean, we can't get past it. And for the listeners that would not even be aware of this, taxes are voluntary. If you really look at your 1040, it says if you're a government employee, you pay taxes. So all of these elected individuals that say they're going to lower taxes, I'm not sure they really understand what the 16th Amendment really meant. And that's where Andy comes in at saying, you know what? I don't need the power of Congress. I just need the chief legislator to determine what the law is. And I declare common law to be the law of the land with the executive power I have in that position. So I don't need Congress to back this up. This is the rights of the people. And we need the people to understand what their rights are.
Very good. I don't believe that the federal income tax was ever ratified by all states. I don't believe it was. Can you answer that?
And I'm going to be in agreement with you on that. It's a guy named David Robinson that talks about that. But even if it was ratified, did the people elect that? Did the people choose that? Because I can never see anybody say we want to voluntarily pay taxes. That's a form of involuntary servitude that violates the 13th Amendment. Why would we work for the government? Why would we work to voluntarily give up 30% of our checks as people when we could just assist our neighbors? And that's where I'm saying we got to go back to the common law, morals, values. And just because it looks right doesn't mean it is right. And we need a real wake up call. And one of the candidates right now, I think it was in the 2020, he said, if you elect me, I'm going to get rid of the payroll tax. Well, the payroll tax is already unconstitutional. With our ministry, we help people do that now. It's the lady Kelly Alexander out of Nevada that has a whole organization that I met with that she does that too. It's a couple different organizations and companies out there that do it. We do it through our ministry, only through our members, which we just started about a couple months ago because I didn't understand how to bring us together as people. And then I saw the power of the ministry. And if I be transparent, I always shied away from the ministry because of the negativity that I saw happening in it until I realized I didn't have to be like that. I could be a minister to minister to people from where I believe ministers should be. I chose to do that.
Very good, Andy. Have you picked up any endorsements from
I have. I have.
organizations? Okay, go ahead.
Well, I won't say so much organizations, but they're leaders of organization. Abolish Slavery National Network, Max Parthes, Brother George. I can't think of his last name right now, but he's got a thing called Genius is Common, brought forth Def Comedy Jam. But then I've also picked up endorsements from some former, well, they're current Republicans. Let me say, I don't want to say former, and individuals because of the platform I have about being a statesman, about doing what's right and what's not popular. What happens is with the endorsements and what people are doing, there's still a concept of saying, well, we don't see you in the media. And I'm always thinking to myself, well, the race isn't given to the swift. Have you seen the tortoise and the hare? You
That's
think you're
good.
moving fast, and it's really the one who studies the right way takes his time. And the unique thing about our campaign is whatever I'm discussing right now, I can assist the people in getting the solutions without having to wait till November 5th, 2024. Everything that I am talking about on my campaign, with the exception of three things, does not require me to be elected. And the three things that require me to be elected is I got to change my address at the postal office because if I'm not elected or hired, I like to say, I can't do that. I got to be able to change the pictures in the White House, which Monday through Friday it'll be the people's house, and then on the weekend it'll be the father's house. We'll have a great, I say open door policy, but I don't mean open door like right off the bat because some things you got to grow into, and you can't just be like, hey, we're free for all. We're some weak people want to love everybody. No, no, there's still accountability with love. So let's not, we're not just moving that saw. And for the funny people who've ever seen 50 Shades of Grey, this guy Christian Grey, he had a red room, and I said, hey, I got to call them to get a red room for me and my wife. So if you ever see me get off Air Force One, me and the Mrs. holding hands. It's a joke, but I really feel that we need to bring some common sense and some livelihood into this election as well as into our politics, and really to understand what the root of politics are is policies, that a lot of the policies that has been put into existence right now are unconstitutional, and they infringe upon our life, liberty, and property and due process. If they do, we just don't know that because we haven't been taught that. Because where would you learn that?
That's right. A lot of our history is slipping away, lost, not to be found again. Well, what do you think, Andy, of the world as you see it today through your eyes?
It depends on what world we're discussing. There's one world that we see through the media that I know is tainted and is biased. And then there's the world that I've created for myself that I see so much opportunity, hope, and possibility. I choose the latter world. And I see the world today as such a great opportunity, specifically for America to live up to its name, to be this great country for all people, not just the privilege, to remove the status and really discuss this is about classism and show how to level the playing field. And as I alluded previously, I've been in different angles from sitting at the table with billionaires to working with drug addicts to having a talk with homeless people. It doesn't matter. And I see each individual as people. That's where I see the world as through the picture that I've painted and said, even if I'm the only one that sees this, I still see it. And that's hope. And that's where I get the possibility that we can have a world that America really shows that we are a great nation that respects its people, that looks out for the least of these, and still holds people accountable.
Wow, you certainly are saying a lot that this country needs in the White House. Okay, in the order of foreign policy, which nation states are the most dangerous to the United States?
Um, Being transparent, I don't know. And the reason why I don't know, because there's always two sides to every story. But what I do know is outside of foreign policy, there's domestic terrorism right here in the United States that I think we need to deal with. I think we need to get our own house in order first. And Abraham Lincoln had talked about that in his speech, A House Divided. Our United States is still divided today. To be all fair, we send billions over to Ukraine, send money to Israel, and we got houseless, poverty, evictions, homeless, all this stuff going on right here. I just don't understand how that could be. And I think it's time that we say we are the people here in the United States and we want to get our house in order. We want to get our land in order. And once we do that, I'm not saying you cut off everything that's going on right now, but once we shift the focus a little bit here and quit trying to be the savior for the rest of the world and be here for the representative of this nation, that we're here in this United States of America, then collectively we can go help the rest of the world.
Another fantastic answer. You've impressed me, and that's hard to do.
And thank you, Frank.
The
I'm
next,
just being honest.
that's what you are, and that's what the people are going to love. 3,000 rockets were launched against the nation state of Israel. Do you believe that this type of attack is possible leveled against the United States?
100% I believe it's possible. And I believe until we, as the United States of a nation, for those that are faith based, truly repent in deed and not just word, as we, as the elected officials and the representatives of government, truly live up to the creed, whether it's Dr. King, that we all are God's children, or whether we're just we the people and we believe in nature's God or a creator. We need to get to really actually living up to that and not just in word and deed, because it's 3,000 rocket launchers from other countries. Well, that same hate is brewing right here in the United States right now.
I'm about ready to get to that question. As a matter of fact, it is the next question. Millions of migrants have crossed our southern border illegally. Is this a matter of national security to you? And what will you do to stop it?
We definitely need our borders secure, okay, for several different reasons. And one is, I mean, we remember when the whole Ebola epidemic broke out. Well, that's got something to do with the borders, letting people come bring things over that they may not know. Okay, but I that's just one, and then other people are coming in here that we do not even know why they're here, but they're spies coming into the land because in areas we're weak at. So the borders definitely need to be secure. But I also think there needs to be a lawful policy for people to enter in here, the country, like tourists or whatever, come over here with visas without it being so much red tape. Because if you remove the red tape and those who lawfully or legally want to come through, and you remove all of these restrictions and have a system in place, then we have a better chance of securing our border because those who are not trying to sneak in here can come in here legally. So now we can focus on securing the borders to ensure those who are not coming here with good intentions, we have a better chance of being able to focus on that as opposed to saying, we got all these restrictions. No. And then number two, wherever all these people are coming from, maybe the United States need to find out why and see if we can't offer aid to these other countries in some form of peace treaty or whatever we got to do to assist them to get their own land straight. Because what I believe is all of us has a part in this puzzle we call life. Everybody has certain resources that if we all utilize our strengths at some point, it can work. Now, listen, I told y'all before, I'm painting a picture. I don't expect this to happen day two. This is 2, 3 years down the line. But I know I'm coming in with a vision ready to implement this because I'm looking at solutions. So we need to secure our borders. Make no mistake about that. But there's a right way to do that. And that's the angle that we want to take.
Very good, Andy. We're going to go to commercial. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Welcome to TIEvents.org, your official insider for the targeted individual community. As the go-to source for all TI events, we're here to keep you in the loop with the latest and greatest happenings. Discover daily conference calls, meetups, and exclusive events across the USA, all at your fingertips. Plus, planning a TI event? Advertise with us for free and connect directly with the TI community. TIEvents.org is not just a website, it's your gateway to a world of information, connection, and empowerment for TIs everywhere. TIEvents.org, your official insider. Dive in and discover today.
Okay, Andy, we're back from commercial. Go right ahead, sir.
You asked me a last question.
Um, we were speaking earlier about the ballot or the bars, and I believe
Yeah.
that's something that Martin Luther King said as well.
So
Something
it was
similar.
Malcolm X and
Malcolm
his
X.
name. It transferred to El Haj Malik Shabazz, and he said it was about the ballot or the bullet. This is in 1960s, and there was police, violence in the communities. And he was saying, my understanding, it was like, look, we can change this through the ballot. And if you don't take the ballot to change this, the bullet's going to keep coming from this, police brutality and excessiveness, police violence against the people, which I alluded earlier about the domestic terrorism. And I by no means am saying that all police are terrible. I know several chiefs of police and police officers that I rather see them as men and women that are working in a profession. So it's not like, oh, we're against the police. There is a spirit in there that's a spirit of entitlement that I think evolved from the spirit of the slave patrols and the slave catchers, just taking the history from what we've been shared with, and that spirit is still in there because a lot of times we've seen when police have violated or infringed somebody's rights, there's always a loophole for that. And that doesn't show accountability or a deterrent. But I'm saying that to say about the ballot or the bullet. What we have is the ballot or the bars. And the ballot or the bars is really about prisoners' rights to vote. So many individuals come home from prison and then the states are infringing upon their right to vote. And I have several Supreme Court opinions that say that's one of the natural, it's a real right. I think on the flip side, somebody said, well, if you commit a crime, then you lose your right to vote. Whenever you have a right, you never lose that right. You're limited to exercising that right. Like you can't be in jail for murder and say, well, I can have a gun in jail because it's my right. That's just a common sense. However, when it comes to an election, it's kind of like the taxation without representation. So you can tax me and I can participate in that part of the democracy, which it should be a republic form of government anyway. But I can participate in me being taxed, which I feel is a form of slavery and voluntary servitude. But then I can't use my vote, which is my freedom of speech. And so we have a class of people that are disenfranchised that don't have that are their right to vote is being infringed. They have the right, but it's being infringed and deprived. And fortunately, there was a Supreme Court opinion that came down that said there's a difference between a federal and state election. They're two different jurisdictions. Right now, we're in the process bringing forth a suit that talks about the ballot or the bars and prisoners' right to vote, where we're going to, because part of my campaign is about abolishing legalized slavery in the form of prisons, and I'm talking about the victimless crimes. That's what I'm talking about, legislative crimes. And most people are not aware of this, but Clarence Thomas wrote a beautiful opinion about private rights and public rights. And so a lot of times people are being locked up for driving without a license, but you don't even need a license to drive unless you're engaged in commerce. Clarence Thomas has said that's unconstitutional because it's a legislative court, and whenever you're depriving somebody of their life, liberty, or property, it has to be in a constitutional court, an Article 3 court, where the plaintiff has had to suffer an injury. So there's a lot of things that we, the people, don't even know about rights because we've been granted all these privileges through this class of people that I think are the ones rights that they say, well, you're a prison felon, you don't have a right no more. And that's wrong. And the ballot of the bars is about the prisoner's right to vote. And that's what we're going to be pushing. And we're going to prevail. We will.
I think you will. Oh, my next question is as follows. Elections in the United States have come under great scrutiny. Axis powers have tried to control our elections. There is, in fact, corruption here in the U.S. What sweeping legislation would you enact to make elections a time for change and not a time for accusations?
I don't know so much if I would pass some legislation. Okay. What I think is that we need to start teaching civics. Most of the people that I believe that are in my generation, maybe 60, maybe and under, maybe. Now, I don't want to say that because there's certain people that are, born Democrat, don't even know why they're a Democrat, don't know the history of Republicans, don't know nothing about nothing, that are just voting a certain way. So I think when we start teaching about what elections are, teaching the purpose of the Electoral College and the difference between a voter and an elector, because they're different. People don't know that. Teaching the difference between a trial by jury and a jury trial. This is what needs to be taught because the framers at that time, what was put in place, I personally, from my reading and understanding and enlightenment, don't think much of the foundation was wrong. Again, I don't think they were perfect men, and I don't think there's no perfect men or women on the earth either. That's why I believe there's checks and balances. That's why there's separation of powers in the government. Once we start teaching about that from, high school, whatever, in the home, in the elections, prior to the elections, I don't think we need to change because I think people will begin to see there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And one of the things that is this missing 13th Amendment. I think it was in Maine. I got. We're going to be writing a little publication about the missing 13th Amendment, where if you were a lawyer or an attorney, something like that, you couldn't run for office. And
Really?
once we really expose that, oh man, listen, all I want to do is bring that back. And there were some senators out of Iowa that wanted to bring that. It's called the title of nobility. You couldn't do that. And so this will change the form of elections because you have a bunch of lawyers being legislators who shouldn't even be legislators because they're
Okay.
lawyers.
The two principal political powers in the United States treat one another as enemies rather than political rivals. The checks and balances system must be updated. How would you change this system to make it more equitable and transparent?
Well, one, I think I'd bring in the Dale Carnegie course, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
That's good. I love that.
Like, listen, here's what we really need to do. Listen, you want to be in Congress, when we have session, we're bringing in the Dale Carnegie course, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Then the second thing is it really a division between the parties, or is it somebody shooting for power because of a political party? And most of the two parties, the majority of everything they want is more the same than indifference. But this imaginary war that started, who knows when, back in 1800s, there was a Democratic Republican Party. Prior to that, it was a Whig Party. They split, and at one point, the Democrats were the Republicans were the Democrats. So it's so much different history that is going on that I'm saying, listen, it's a whole new generation, which goes back to the question previously. We need to teach about civics and politics. And for me, when I say I'm running on behalf of We Are the People, that means a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Constitutionalist, anybody could say, we like Andy, and we're going to vote based on character, morals, integrity, and value. And I don't think you can legislate that. I think that's something that has to be done. You have to represent that.
Very good, Andy. I have a couple of questions there on foreign policy. What would you do to change events now happening in the South China Sea? And I'm going to couple that with one other question as well. 86% of the people of the United States feel that the People's Republic of China is an enemy, not to be trusted in world events. What do you think? I can repeat anyone.
No, no, I'm trying to make sure I phrase the answer the right way. And I'm just gonna say, I think a true leader does not answer the question until they have all the facts. The position where I sit, and I think a lot of us sit, we don't really have all of the facts. Now, there's a brother I met, Ken Armstrong. He was running for president with the Libertarian Party. His policy in this, he's more of an expert on this area. So I would have to, use my lifeline, which is why you have a cabinet. I don't want me to be the guy that says I have the answer to everything. The cabinet members that you bring out, like Colin Powell, when he was, alive, um, he would be an expert in this area, and you would allude to him for this information. But again, from where we sit at least from the seat that I'm sitting in, I've heard about the Republic of China. I see the government. I see certain things that they do. But it's not always what we see is the truth. I think there's always a cause and effect. And we cannot deny that the United States government has the people who have been representative of the United States government, because it's the people, it's not the government that does this. They've done some, when we say unclean hands, they've done some things that has had other countries hate us, and then we don't always tell the whole truth. We just tell part of the truth. Kind of like those that read the Bible. the story about the serpent and Eve, he didn't tell the whole truth. So his lie was kind of like the truth, but it wasn't the whole truth. And I think that's kind of like how our country and stuff happens. We don't tell the whole truth. So do we see the Republic of China being a threat? I can't say yes or no because I don't want to go off of hearsay, and that's the truth, Frank. I'm just being honest.
Okay, now what I've noticed about you, you've demonstrated just a minute ago. If you don't know the answer, you won't answer the question. And that's fantastic. You came right up and you said, well, that's what the cabinet's for. That's what my advisors are for. When you get that far, you will know the answers.
Definitely.
Okay, I'm just going to add this in here. This is more foreign policy. The Axis powers across the world, we'll say Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. We now appear very weak to these nation states. What would you do to show them not to step on the tiger's tail again?
One of the things, as they begin to see us get rid of our own division between the political parties. So let's say, for instance, we really did take the Dale Carnegie class in Congress, and then all of that bickering, that garbage, that division, it started reducing itself, and then America started seeming like they were healthy and whole. Well, we already got a strong military base, and once you see us united and not divided, you know not to mess with us. Don't come over here, as we say, playing that monkey ball games. We're not here for no games. We will look out for our people here in the United States, as Malcolm said, by any means necessary. And it's a song, Scarface from the general. You want to go to war? It'll take you to war. We're not trying to go to war. We believe in the peace. We believe in waving the white flag. Hey, listen, we all can get along here. But if you come across that line and you infringe upon our people's rights, you won't be doing it again.
That's great. That is really fantastic. Okay, I'm going to throw one in here. The national debt is probably something you're into, but the national debt is spiraling out of control to the tune of $40 trillion. The federal government takes in approximately $4 trillion annually. The system is destined to fail eventually. Everyone knows it. What would you do to curb spending in the United States? Do you feel that there is a way to go back to the gold standard, which will go down in history as the biggest mistake ever enacted by a sitting president?
So, Texas, I think they passed some things or declared that they were going back to the gold standard. So I appreciate what Texas is doing. One thing to do is balance your checkbook. You can't spend what you don't have. And then, really, where is this money coming from out of thin air? Ralph Nader, one of those guys, I want to say it was him, and they was like in the Fed. I'll be honest, I know a lot more about the national debt than I'm willing to say right now on the
Okay.
public radio.
Yeah.
But one of the things I do know is when we get back to bartering and trading and the people take their power back, we're going to stop buying all these stupid things that we're doing. Because again, the people have a sense of accountability in the national debt that's happening too. We're depending on the government for all kinds of things. When we need healthcare, we need like all of these things. No, we don't. What we need to do is look out for the elders, the widows, and the orphans. And you don't need to be an elected official to do that. All you need to be is like a good neighbor, like State Farm says, or Mr. Rogers, hello, boys and girls, welcome to my neighborhood. And when we start doing that, and stop turning a blind eye when we see our neighbors are hurting and the different things like that, that national debt will start going down. And there's a 12 USC 411, I think it is, where we can bring back lawful money. And people can do that right now. Just sign your check for lawful money demanded pursuant to 12 USC 411 and go back to the original money, not this Federal Reserve notes. And like I said, Frank, I promise you I know a lot more about this debt and how they pledge our people as security for this stuff. And it's a lot more that goes on behind that. That's an advanced class, I like to say, but it's more about an advanced implementation. And if you look at John F. Kennedy, not, yeah, JFK, let me think what he's, there was something he was trying to change about the Federal Reserves and then the Fed. And that can be brought back, what he was trying to do. It can be done. And that'll balance the budget. It'll start reducing the national debt, I should say. Let's start reducing the national debt. And I think we need to stop running to the government for everything. We the
Yes.
people have a lot more power than we know.
Well, we have to stop useless organizations created by the government. Uh,
Hmm.
they just go on, making the government bigger instead of making it smaller. I'd love to see it be a town hall government like it started out, but we can't do that. Okay, my next
Why
question.
can't we?
Well, we can. I think that people should be able to see the president of the United States if they want. I really believe that. It has to be more personal. Right now, the president of the United States, you can't go near the White House. You can't go up to the door and knock. But anyway, before 1973, our currency was backed by gold. And what happened is the dollar was in trouble in 1973. It was right before the 74 oil crisis. People were coming here, we'll say from country A, country B, wanting gold. They were turning in dollars and wanting gold. Well, President Nixon stood up and said, well, you can't have the gold. This is what we're doing now. So fiat currency of today is backed by nothing. As long as the people believe that it is legal tender, they will use it. And what do you think about that? It's really nutty. Go ahead.
You can't pay a debt with a debt. That's what the Federal Reserve notes are.
That's right. It starts out
You
as a
cannot pay a debt with a
yeah,
debt.
every dollar has interest on it the minute you pick it up.
Yeah, and again, like I said, once the people begin to understand and know about our rights and what we have, we can change this. And this is this 2024 election for me is more than just a vote. This is about our unalienable rights. This is about we're tired of being tricked, the old banana in the tailpipe, the wool taking over our eyes. And as we begin to pick up, I'm coming under the Harry S. Truman. The buck stops here. This is the generation. The buck
Fantastic.
stops here.
Now, what are your feelings on the Electoral College? Is this something that you would try and abolish? Because it's useless to me the way I see it. You have a stronger knowledge in this area, I'm sure. So could you answer that?
Well, my electoral college advisor is Brother Pete from GA, and it's a couple of things. No, because I have advisors all over. So this is how I move the way I need to move. The electoral college, from its original inception, was about making sure there was some balances. Okay, and again, there's a difference between an elector and a voter. There's a big difference. And when we go back to civics teaching about the electoral college and really comprehending why it was put in place, then maybe it doesn't need to be abolished. Maybe it needs to be what it was intended to be when it was intended to be. Because what people do, we all know, I'm guilty of it in the past sometimes, might do it tomorrow. I doubt it's the Sabbath for us, so I probably don't do too much wrong. But we abuse our positions when we know more than the other individual. We abuse it and we take advantage of those that are less knowledgeable about stuff. So I think with the Electoral College, it could have had a good intention when it was created. Now, maybe sometimes we evolve and we outgrow that. But if you have a state that has the majority and there's no balance, but they're then they can just win because you're the most popular. Like I think about all the campaigns right now. You're not voting for the one most qualified. You're voting for the one that's the most popular that can outspend somebody, get all these commercials. We ain't doing that. And I think that's what the Electoral College said. Each party is given a certain number of electors. So when you get those electors and you get the popular vote or you get this, the numbers, it keeps a balance there. And I think that was the real reason for the Electoral College. But again, things change as we evolve. So I really want to look into that to see what the best way is. And you know what? I'm probably give Pete a call.
Yes, the popular vote, many presidents over the years have won by the popular vote of the people and lost by the electorate. So that's my problem with the Electoral College. If
Well,
like there are so many votes, or pardon me, so many electors in California, there are a lot of them. So if you win California, you have a real, I don't even know how many you get for California, but it's a lot. And if you win some tiny little state, you might get a couple of electoral votes. But you get the popular vote there, and you didn't get the popular vote in California. So it's kind of confusing to a lot of people. I'd like to call you up and talk about it if we could sometime,
okay.
and go from there. But what I would love you to do is, I'd like your closing statement, and we've got 4 or 5 minutes. Take your time and give us a closing statement, and we'll say good night. Go right ahead. Take your time.
Well, no, I want you to go to www.awj2024.com. That's the campaign website. All social media websites will be the Hood Candidate. The Hood Candidate comes from a couple different things. My 2020 election, I had a suit on with a hoodie. The Hood Candidate is restoring the neighbor back to the hood. It also comes from the guy I'm inspired by, the story of Christ. He was in the neighborhood. He went where the people were. He was in the marketplace. So that's kind of like the Hood Candidate for the brand. And plus, there's a young vote that needs somebody that's hip, that can speak their language and still represent common sense solutions. But what I will tell you, this 2024 election seems to be the most important. I would say we the people are the most important. And no matter what happens on November 5th, 2024, we the people still have work to do. We the people have the power. We've always had the power. We don't just get to go to the polls, cast a vote, and think our work is done. That's not how this works. It works that we ensure that those that we elect serve the interests of the people and they do their job. And whenever an elected official violates their oath of office, they war against the Constitution. That's treason. That's punishable by death. Not because I said it, but that's because that's what the rules were. We don't follow those rules. Somebody said there's immunity. Somebody did this. I couldn't do my job. You're not doing your job. And I'm saying this down from the lowest, from the mayor or alderman, anyone that's, you know, takes an oath, they should hold that oath. And they should be held accountable to the oath. And the only way they're going to be held accountable to that oath is if we, the people, do it. There's a group called Tactical Civics. I can't think of the guy that started that right now. I'm a member of it in Illinois. I signed up for a year. But Tactical Civics, they teach the rights right now. They teach the rights right now. $50 a year. I didn't even think I would say this, but I'm throwing a plug out for the information because that's what they do. I don't have to teach it because they do, but I can share the good news. And the good news is we, the people, have the power. We've always had the power. And I ask every last one of you, if you want to get involved in the campaign, go to the website, pick the drop down button, what you say you want to do, shoot me an email. More than likely, I'll respond back to you as of right now because we still have. My days is tightening up, but I still got availability, and I'm looking for some support. I'm looking for support, and the biggest thing is we need a letter writing campaign. We need a letter writing campaign to write to our loved ones that are in prison, letting them know there's a guy out here that cares about the people's rights and their family, prisoners' rights and their families. And I truly care about public safety. So I'm not letting no deranged criminals, as we would call them, out who are a harm to themselves or society. We're not doing that. And you want somebody who's been in prison that knows other prisoners to ensure that they're not letting some loose cannon out the door because they got some smooth lip talk, smooth surface conversation. But hey, I'm Andy Williams Jr., the statesman, also known as the hood candidate, and I want all of us to be free in 2024.
Thank you, Andy. I would like to thank you very much for being here with us this evening. And I would like to thank our listening audience. And I would like to say good night from Boston, Massachusetts.